Hi there, it's Robert M. Price, the Bible Geek, but this isn't technically the Bible Geek. This is the Second Corinthians Geek. We actually finished going through the text of Second Corinthians last time, and next time I want to start with Galatians. But it occurred to me that the little bitty article I read to you recently called Strange Tales in Paradise. It was a sequel, as I mentioned, to one I'd written years ago, decades ago actually, called Punished in Paradise. And I thought maybe I'd finish off our discussion of Second Corinthians by reading you that one and seeing what you think. I summarized a bit of it earlier, but I think it's worth taking a second look at. Okay, it's called Punished in Paradise, an exegetical theory on 2 Corinthians 12, 1 through 10. To most students of the Pauline epistles, 2 Corinthians 12, 1 through 10 must surely stand out as exceptional among Pauline texts. Elsewhere, the interpreter may well feel at home amid Paul's pastoral and theological musings. But here, suddenly, the apostle ascends into the heavens and takes the unsuspecting reader with him. And just as Paul, the visionary, is charged to divulge his revelations to no man, so the baffled exegete may find it impossible to say anything intelligible about this bizarre text. The present piece will attempt to make 2 Corinthians a bit more intelligible, yet perhaps at the price of making it seem rather more bizarre as well. As for the setting of the passage, Paul finds himself embattled with cynical super apostles, 11:5, who malign his weakness and unimpressiveness. By contrast, they think they can appeal to visions and revelations, which serve to accredit them just like the prophets of old. What can Paul possibly produce to compare with such wonders? After all, they must have assured the gullible Corinthians he's never mentioned such experiences, has he? Well then, Paul responds in our text by breaking his 14-year silence and adducing a quite spectacular visionary experience from the past. Quickly explaining his reticence to describe it heretofore, Paul spurns an appeal to such things for accreditation purposes. Confidence should instead be based on observable and proven character, which he is sure he has amply demonstrated. But to silence the scoffers and to beat them at their own worthless game, Paul allows himself to boast. He seems to be having a bit of fun at his own expense as well as that of his rivals. Basically, the thrust of the pronouncement story, constituted by 2 Corinthians 12, 1 through 10, is that the blessing of God comes only on the heels of adversity, not in the midst of visionary ecstasy. How does he know this? Because his own journey to heaven resulted in the former, not the latter. Though this gist has been obvious enough to all exegetes, it is safe to say that the individual details of the story have seemed obscure. Not only so, but the exact connection is less than clear between the revelations and the mysterious thorn received by Paul on account of them. The present notes will seek to clarify these points in a new and perhaps surprising way. First, it should be recalled that the motif of a visionary journey to heaven or paradise must have been well known to the apostle. Much of the contemporary apocalyptic literature known to us deals with the ascension into heaven of various ancient patriarchs and prophets, including Enoch, Ezra, Baruch, Moses, and Levi. They return to divulge what they have seen and heard. They have learned secrets pertaining to the end of the age, the hierarchy of angels, astronomy, and calendar lore. In our passage, as elsewhere in his correspondence, Paul evidences familiarity with this world of ideas. For instance, he knows that it was the third of multiple heavens that he visited. And as the ancient visionaries were said to have traveled sometimes physically, Enoch, Elijah, Baruch, and sometimes astrally, soul travel, Ezekiel, Moses, Paul also knows both as theoretical possibilities. Verses 2 through 3, whether in the body or out of the body, God knows. Another branch of Jewish arcana with which Paul may have been familiar, as J. Bowker shows, is that of Merkavah, throne mysticism. This was a mystical technique practiced in Paul's day and for centuries afterward. It can be traced as far back as the 1st century AD among the pupils of Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai. Hints of it are also to be found in earlier works, including the Testament of Levi, 1st Enoch, and the Qumran scrolls. In the opinion of Gershom Scholem, the Apostle Paul forms a connecting historical link between such literature and the later developed Merkavah mysticism. Basically, such a mystic contemplated Ezekiel's vision of God's throne, Ezekiel 1:4 through 2:14, in hopes of experiencing a vision of the heavenly throne chariot himself. Though Bowker does not bother to adduce significant parallels between Merkavah texts and Paul's experience in 2 Corinthians 12:1 through 10, these are not lacking, as will be shown presently. Having briefly recalled the context of our passage, as well as the thought world in which it is to be set, the discussion will proceed to the identity of Paul's thorn in the flesh. Paul is said thus to be afflicted to avoid his becoming insufferably proud over the privilege of listening in on heavenly mysteries. Kai te hyperbole ton apocalypsion. Verse 7's mention of revelations is usually taken to refer back to the series of visionary experiences first mentioned in verse 1, of which the one here described is but a single example. That's when he said to go on to visions and revelations. Okay, this need not be so. Instead, I suggest that the revelations of verse 7 have a more immediate antecedent, that is, the unutterable utterances, arata remata, of verse 4. Thus, the thorn will have been inflicted in direct connection with the heavenly secrets disclosed to Paul on the particular occasion described in our passage. The importance of this suggestion for our exegesis will soon be clear. But what of the thorn itself? Needless to say, it has been a thorn in the side to exegetes as well. Most interpreters, of course, most explanations make of the thorn a physical or nervous illness of some sort. Among other candidates are such maladies as malaria, epilepsy, eye trouble, neuralgia, colic, rheumatism, and leprosy. It would be no wonder that the apostle would have traveled with a beloved physician. A few have understood flesh in a less literal sense, and so take Paul to mean some besetting sin or temptation. Menude has claimed that Paul is referring to his anguish over Israel's hardness of heart toward Christ. Mullins gives good reasons to take the thorn as meaning an irritating enemy. He points out that similar descriptions of enemies occur in the Septuagint version of Numbers 33:55, Joshua 23:13, 1 Kings 14:9, 2 Chronicles 24:8, Song of Solomon 2:2, Ezekiel 2:6 and 28:24, and Micah 7:4. He also suggests that the use of colafizo, to beat with the fist, implies a personal antagonist. Paul's Corinthians opponents are already designated in 2 Corinthians 11:14 through 15 as Satan's diakonoi, a term very similar to angelos satana, angel of Satan or messenger of Satan, in 12:7. Paul did indeed agonize over Jewish unbelief, but this hardly seems to be in view here. And though he did have to fight sensual temptation, 1 Corinthians 9:27, it is rather hard to see how he would have made the connection between any particular sin and his visionary experience. That the thorn was a sin is especially unlikely, since the purpose of the thorn was to prevent him from indulging in sin, that is, for instance, of pride. That is, of pride. Contextually, probably the best of these options is Mullins's theory of personal opponents, but the same weakness besets all these suggestions. How would Paul have concluded that any of these things was sent his way in connection with his journey to paradise? At this point, the kinship of Paul's vision with Jewish throne mysticism makes things much clearer. In the more elaborate descriptions of Merkavah visions, we find the visionary being attacked by angels and or demons on his way to the divine throne room. Sholem describes the typical vision. Quote, as the journey progresses, the dangers become progressively greater. Angels and archons storm against the traveler in order to drive him out. According to the Munich manuscript of the Hekaloth texts, the Heavenly Palace texts, if anyone was unworthy to see the king in his beauty, the angels at the gates disturbed his senses and confused him. But he was standing in front of the angels when they began to stone him, and they strike his head and wound him. In a lesser Hekaloth text, Rabbi Akiva describes his journey to paradise. In that hour when I ascended on high, when I came to the curtain, angels of destruction went forth to destroy me. Our suggestion is that in light of such texts, it makes sense to understand the thorn in the flesh, an angel of Satan sent to buffet me, as quite literally a demon or malevolent angel sent to punish Paul's pride at the wonder of his experience. Thorn, scallops, in classical usage can mean stake and can be equivalent to cross or stauros. Paul's pride was deflated, and the phrase is parallel and equivalent to Galatians 5:24. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Thus, like the visionaries in the Hekaloth passages, he must take his licks insofar as he is unworthy to see the enthroned Lord. Reconstructing the heavenly scenario, we may imagine this to have been the sequence of events. Paul finds himself caught up into heaven. There he is treated to ineffable revelations. Waxing proud over his enviable position, Paul suddenly finds himself the object of attack by a punishing demon or angel. Paul appeals thrice to the exalted Lord on the heavenly throne before him, who finally declares that Paul must learn his lesson, that is, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. It is a lesson that Paul learned well, carrying it with him through subsequent earthly trials. 2 Corinthians 12:10. This picture may seem to some readers a bit too outlandish to be plausible, but let the reader keep in mind that he's already dealing with the story of a man who claims to have visited heaven one day. Given a camel of this size, why strain at the mere gnat proposed here? A couple of details in the passage may not seem to comport with the present reconstruction. Paul prayed 3 times that the angel might leave him. To most readers, it sounds as if Paul had prayed for some kind of healing. After a while, with no recovery in sight, Paul would pray again, until after the 3rd time he resigned himself. Yet the 3 requests do not need to denote an extended period. In Mark 14:35 through 39, Garden of Gethsemane, we see Jesus praying one prayer 3 times on one occasion. The reader may be asking how, if, according to this reading of the text, Paul was literally pummeled by an attacker, he could have not known whether his ascent to paradise was in the body, 2 Corinthians 12:2 through 3. Here again, another New Testament text provides clarification. In Acts 12, Peter is awakened in prison by an angel striking him on the side, a circumstance very similar to that envisioned here. Yet he is unsure whether it is all really happening or merely a vision, Acts 12:9. In the same way, Paul may have experienced apparently corporeal pain, yet not have known whether his presence were physical or merely astral. In conclusion, it will be interesting to note that Paul's experience, as reconstructed here, finds further parallels in other early Christian literature. Visionaries find themselves under demonic/angelic attack from which they are to learn a lesson. For instance, Hermas's 4th vision, Shepherd of Hermas, finds him being charged by a huge monster which, quote, is a type of the persecution to come, end quote. He is to learn this lesson and pass it on to his brethren, quote, put your faith in the Lord, you men of divided purpose, because he can do all things and turns aside his wrath from you, while he sends scourges on you who doubt in your heart. That's from Vision 4, 2:6. As in Paul's vision, the hero is to learn to trust the Lord's power in adversity. Similarly, in the 12th mandate, he is told, the devil can wrestle with but not overcome them. Mandate 12:5-2. In the 7th parable, he asks the angel of repentance to call off the avenging angel who is severely afflicting him. But, quote, if he endures the afflictions that come to him, mercy to the full will be granted by the Creator of all things, who also has given strength and who will grant a remedy. Similitude 7:1-4. Here an angel is behind troubles suffered in waking life, yet this lesson is symbolized by a vision where Hermas sees the avenging angel beating Christians and throwing them into patches of thorns. Similitude 6:5-6. In the 2nd century martyrdom of Perpetua and Felicitas, the heroine has two visions wherein she steps on the head of a dragon and defeats Satan in gladiatorial combat. From these demonic conflicts, she learns that she will be given grace in adversity. She will be victorious in facing her death for Christ. Martyrdom, paragraphs 4 and 10. Eusebius tells the story of Natalius, who had been seduced by heresy. He finally repented of his error when he was, quote, lashed by holy angels through the whole night and was thus most severely punished, end quote. He had learned his lesson and in sackcloth and ashes begged to be readmitted to the Orthodox communion. Ecclesiastical History, Book 5, Chapter 28. The demonic harassment theme occurs again in early medieval vision literature. For instance, the visions of Furcius in 622 AD and Drithelm about 725 AD. The present reconstruction of Paul's journey to paradise has the advantage of providing a logical connection between the superlative visions on the one hand and the punitive experience of the, quote, thorn, unquote, on the other, a feature conspicuous by its absence from most of the exegetical theories. It also makes sense of this visionary pronouncement story as a whole by placing it against the background of ancient Jewish and Christian vision literature. As warned earlier, the passage seen this way may seem even further removed from the experience of modern readers than it did before. Yet the punchline is always the important thing in a pronouncement story, and there's no reason that Paul's lesson should be alien to the experience of any modern reader. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Okay, so that's the original. Now, I know I'm really treading on, taking advantage of your, wait a minute. Okay, yeah, we got a bunch of questions here. Good, that's let's deal with that. Yeah. This one isn't quite on point, but it's worth discussing. JFA 63 says, I was disappointed in the new atheists attacking Anthony Flew for becoming a deist. Seems they became unwavering fundamentalists themselves, unable to allow others to change their minds. Yeah, that's true. There is such a thing as fundamentalist atheism, that's for darn sure. I can sympathize with them. I know what they mean. It is surprising that Flew turned to deism. At least it seems as if he did. There's some controversy over whether that was actually his conclusion or the collaborator who kind of put some notes or some interview material, I forget which, into final shape might have imported that. But I assume that he did actually express support for the idea of deism. Okay, there was a creator, but that doesn't mean the Bible is true in every way. I do have some sympathy for that, as I've mentioned before, because I do find all the astonishing things in nature, from the wonders of astronomy to those of biology and reproduction and so forth. It is all so amazing. You begin to think, almost involuntarily, there's got to be some kind of designer here. But as soon as I think that, I think, wait a minute, that's no answer. That doesn't help. because then you got to ask where the implied order of such a mind came from. And it looks like you're just appealing to the God of the gaps. Well, I don't know what the heck this intelligent designer could have been, but whatever he is, he made it. He or it made it. That's just no answer, right? And if you're satisfied with that, you're choking off further inquiry, which might lead to a better answer. So I can't really go that route. But I can understand how somebody might, in fact, be tempted. I'm not a deist, but I can understand both sides on that one. Let's see. Jeff also says, I appreciated Robert Anton Wilson taking down all fundamentalisms in his very humorous style. Dirk says, hello. Jeff Ape says, it's strange to me that there were accounts of folks being taken to heaven, since the ancient Israelites thought the nephesh, the soul force, the animating force, waited in Sheol until the resurrection. Well, I think the ascensions of Enoch, implicitly Moses, and also Elijah come from the fact that they were originally the Son personified, the S-U-N. And then once they were made into gifted human beings, heroes of faith, etc., they were exceptions to the rule in that they went to heaven not after they died, but instead of dying, right? It wasn't believed in general that humans, even the righteous ones, would have any place in heaven where God is, unless they were special favorites and were taken up instead of having to die. And eventually they did come to modify it and make it more Mahayana, a greater vehicle where more could go up. Jeff echoes what I say in my sequel to my article I read the other day. Yeah, Spong's notion that the thorn was homosexual orientation seemed far-fetched to me. I just reread that today, and I have to admit, he does approach it systematically, and each step is not implausible, but somehow it just, having read the thing all together, I just can't buy it. Let's see. Proper FPV says only the righteous were taken to heaven because it was the realm of the divine. The average believer being taken to heaven wasn't part of the equation until the New Testament. Yeah. Christian Thompson says, is it okay to smoke weed according to the Bible? Well, of course, it doesn't mention it, so we don't know. The Bible, in the Old Testament, they're certainly friendly to wine making the heart merry. This might be similar. I personally take a dim view of this. I hate to see intelligent people becoming chuckling idiots under the influence. I think, come on, this can't be right. I also feel like I take a rule utilitarian view of this. I think, though, any individual in any given case may not be doing anything particularly nefarious, but given the danger of drugs in general, I think it would be better to have a united front among serious people saying, now, we're not going to do this, and we think it would be better if everybody didn't. Can't enforce it, I guess, but I think that would be a better stance. Not that you couldn't, well, like, what does it say? What does Paul say? All things are lawful for me, but not everything is expedient. Okay. Jeff says, I saw a survey asking if the Catholic Church will allow uh, LGBT priests. I thought of First Timothy 3, where it says bishops and deacons are supposed to be married and have children. I wonder how the church got past that. Well, I don't know how they fit priests into that exactly. I mean, that's not quite the same thing as either of these ancient offices. Uh, let's see. I guess, I mean, you could say that since it doesn't actually explicitly ban gay folks from the clergy, especially since they didn't exactly have clergy, then you can't really say that it's forbidden, right? He's dealing with heterosexuals there, and they can't be polygamists, or possibly he means remarried after a divorce or after the death of a spouse. It could mean any of those things in the ancient cultural setting. And if he's dealing with somebody who's not married to begin with, because either they're celibate or gay, well, that simply doesn't apply to them. It doesn't reflect negatively on them, seems to me. Yeah. Mm. Proper FPV says some of the incense found in the temple or in other shrines in ancient Israel was cannabis. It does seem that way, yeah. Um, let's see. Jeff says, since pharmakia is translated sorcery and we get our word drug from it, I wonder how the use of entheogens is scriptural. Corral price. Oh, excuse me, gotta take this. Hi. Okay, I'm doing the show. I'll be off in a little bit. It's okay. I'll see you soon. Uh, I probably will have to um, get out of here a little early. Um, we got a crowded schedule. Yeah, I don't know that anything like entheogens, that is, hallucinogens and so on, is treated in the Bible or even mentioned. Some people think it's implied. I find it a bit tenuous. But, I'm not passing judgment there. Did Paul, Graham Pong said, did Paul leave any hints as to what the Corinthians did? Ha! To leather that made it so special. Fine Corinthian leather. Yeah. Admiral Kirk, who died the other day. What a tragedy. Um, yeah, that's a goodie. I like it. I don't know what the heck, special about Corinthian leather. Let's see. Graham Pong says, those who expect me to believe as they do without providing me adequate evidence for doing so can go pound sand until they do have some evidence. Amen. I say, Graham again, I say, believe as you want, don't hurt others, and don't expect me to jump through your hoops. Right? Oh. Tritarch says to Jeff, I'm a deist and I get broadsided by both atheists and theists. You get used to it, lol. Uh, okay, well, I do need to go. I have a doctor's appointment. coming up. So I'm cutting it a little short today, but tomorrow we will begin Galatians. And I hope you got something out of Paul's trip on the heavenly elevator. I'll see you next time.